Fellow tennis nerds, I hope all is well. Today I have some distinguished guests with me. Dennis Fabian, you know from before, Global Business Manager at Head. He's also joined by Global Product Manager, Maximilian Bauer. And we're going to talk about the record player in the screen there. You might see it if you're watching this or if you're listening to it. It's a really cool record player, but we're actually going to talk about the Head Extremes, the new rackets that recently launched. But first of all, how are you guys?
Doing really well. Thanks to be back here on your podcast, on your video cast. Like always nice talking to you. And we also watched your reviews already on the Extreme. That's why we saw like, why not having a chat with you about it?
Sounds good. So explain the record player. It looks really cool. It has some extreme design on it, right?
Correct. So like, I don't know, like probably everyone has followed a little bit our postings on social media and our webpage and stuff, and see the entire communications campaign. And as everyone hopefully by now is aware that our Extreme silo is a lot about power and spin. We thought like, why not doing something different? Why not looking a little bit outside of the box? And as we have done some improvements on the rackets and specifics also on the sound, we thought like, why not collaborating with like a legendary brand like Technics. I think a lot of people know Technics out of the DJ record player, and this is the original DJ record player where we collaborated with Technics to create this special design in the communications look and feel of the Extreme racket. And we actually use this right now like around the globe. We showed it at our sales meeting with some music spinning, so for good sound. Our dream still is to have like the racket sound on the vinyl and then playing it to people, but we are working on this one. And Max and I, we just got back from our spin around the world, more or less, because we flew around the world for the Extreme launch. But Max can maybe tell a little bit more about this one.
Yeah, exactly. So it was pretty nice. We visited some of our key markets and promoted the Extreme a little bit. And actually, this record player also played a crucial role in this one, because in Seoul, South Korea, we had quite a nice launch party promoting the new Extreme launch. Yeah, spreading the word a little bit about all the updates. We did lots of consumer experience days all over the world, like listen to the feedback of consumers. So we have all that's ready already for the next generation of Extreme. And yeah, the feedback is really positive so far. So I think we've done a pretty decent job on the upgrades, but yeah, sure, we'll talk a little bit more about all of that.
Yeah, it's cool to travel, and I think it's nice to see tennis in different cultures, right? That's quite important. So what were your thoughts about re-engineering this update? Because it's becoming more and more important line in your racket silos, I guess, like with Prestige being lower in power and this being what players look for more, like extreme power, extreme spin. It's more the modern game. So what do you like think about when you go looking for the design or for improvements to playability? Do you look at lots of feedback from players for the previous generation, and how do you do that?
Well, overall, what we are trying to explore more and more as well is, that's also linked again to the record players, the sound. Like when we listen to, for example, when you do your reviews with Hendrik and with other players, like with Nikki, or if we look into the US, where also a lot of podcasters and video reviews are done, we hear a lot, and this is not Extreme specific, this is tennis specific, that we hear a lot on like, well, the sound of the racket, the sound of the impact feel. And we believe that the frequencies of the string bed with the ball impact, the swing speed players generate, all of this has a lot of like implication or impact on how somebody perceives the tennis racket. And that, like, especially on the Extreme, which is a powerful frame, we believe that we need to tweak it. We need to get it a little bit of modern twist, a little bit of a more modern update, and not that kind of pingy, nearly rattling sound that maybe the previous generation, at least out of our perspective, because everything I'm saying is always very subjective, right? Like, this is very tough to judge, because like, I can't tell you how you hear something or like how you feel something, or anyone in the world. So that's why we need to be also very honest. So all the feedback is always super important. So we looked into this, and so we made some major updates actually to the Extreme line, where a lot of people sometimes believe we just put new colors on it and all of this. But this one in particular has been it has been quite a journey to find the right kind of bits and pieces that we wanted to adjust. And also the testing was super interesting. And also for me, being in the industry for nearly 20 years now, it was a very eye-opening testing period. But like I let Max talk a little bit about the technical details about the testing process. But a lot of things have happened with the Extreme silo by now.
Yeah, the Extreme is also really a fun racket always to develop, because I think one nice thing about it is that it has a very clear positioning. So it's really all about power and spin, and definitely lies on one extreme spectrum of the head universe for a racket. So this is always cool to develop, because it's very clear what kind of target you have. You want to maximize spin, you want to maximize power, and then we will nail this crisp impact level is already known for. And yeah, as Dennis mentioned, like the testing was a huge part this time. We did lots of consumer testing, lots of subjective testing, some lots of feedback, and not only focusing on actual ball speed and power, but also trying to really optimize the perceived power of the racket comes with, as about to with the sound. And yeah, the playtest for us was really also very fun, because it was as clear as ever before. So this was a test outcome which made our jobs very simple, because it was so clear, something we have never seen so far. So all the updates we have done basically delivered a result that was very clear. So we tested with 24 testers in this run. And actually we have one nice test where we can identify if players even feel a difference. And we figured out that 23 out of 24 players actually identified the update and what's new. And then all of those 23 players also preferred the updated version of the game. So this was something very nice, which made us very confident the updates.
Not only head people, right? Like, so for the audience, it's important, like maybe to know, we're not celebrating ourselves all the time with the testers. It's like we go out, because that's, I think, pretty crucial, because I can see already comments, well, like if they have 24 people out of the head office, obviously they all love the head product. That's not the case. So we really go out and we test with players that play all kinds of rackets, but we try to focus on the target group, like players who actually play a powerful racket. And I guess everyone knows our competition here, like the Pure Arrows of this world, the Ezols of this world, which we are tackling.
When you engineer a racket for spin, like what are your properties you're thinking about in the racket? Like,
the first thing that comes into play is for sure the string pattern. So you can do a lot with the string pattern, and not only the numbers of strings, but more importantly, even the spacing of the strings. So depending on where the players hit the ball, you want to make it more open to improve the spin potential. So this is something we've been looking into. But at the same time, it really comes to the grommet sets as well. So the way the grommet holes are engineered, you can maximize the spin potential by allowing more movement of the strings, basically. And then it's also a lot to do with the material of the grommet sets, because less friction of the strings with the grommet material also allow more spin potential in the end. And this is what we really focused on. So we updated the material of the grommets, which has a crucial impact on the sound of the new Extreme. So it really gets this crisp impact feel spot on. And at the same time, we improved the spin potential of the racket with this update.
But truth to be told, did you feel it?
I feel a difference. I'm not sure. As you know, maybe you've seen my review. I'm a fan of the Extreme Tour previous one, but that's like, I think also a very personal thing. So I felt difference. I felt difference in terms of like better dampening, bigger sweet spot. I felt like the racket felt more solid. Like the other one, I have to add weight, right? So my old Extreme Tour, I add weight to it. This one, I didn't need to add weight, right? But still, like, I prefer more vibrations probably because it might be muscle memory, whatever. But if I look at the comments on the YouTube video, most people seem to prefer this one. It's quite clear. So it shows how personal it is, you know. It's just like me going back to the one that's, okay, I feel a bit more connected to that one. But then I get in the comments, like, people are like, no, but the new one is better because I get more on the ball. They don't need to have any weight, but I already have my weight spec'd up and everything. So it's tricky as a tester sometimes to just give it like exactly what you want in a racket. It's like, because it's such a personal thing, you know how that is.
I think
it's been received very positively in the comments, but I still kind of want to go back to the old one because I that's my muscle memory.
It's overall
it is.
a very fair point, and I think that's what I appreciate, especially on your reviews. And it's kind of like it's your opinion. You're like not trying to kind of support the brand in telling the new story of something. But that's why I was curious to hear. And again, it goes back to what I just said. It's all subjective, right? Like we can all only also make decisions based on, let's say, statistics where we do testing. And if it's 50-50, that's obviously more difficult for us to make a decision. But on this one in particular, as Max mentioned, it was like really so obvious. And so we need to sacrifice that. We might have you playing the older version still, but for the overall success, we believe that we went in the right direction. And just for the listeners, so like you talk about the Extreme Tour, what we have done, we have updated the naming structure a little bit. So the previous tour is now called the Extreme Pro, the same racket, same specs. So there's no major difference. But it's also interesting what you say, that you needed to add lead to, or like weight to the older frame, and now to this one not. So that's where you can see how much material choices of the grommets, layup updates, and all this have impact on the perceived stability, the perceived feel, the perceived sound. And with intention, I'm saying perceived, because everyone, again, feels slightly different.
I think that's for everyone. Like that's the way rackets work. Like it's such a personal connection based on your muscle memory, based on how you play. So it's very tricky topic. But like if you put things on paper, I think statistically, like, okay, this is a better racket than the predecessor. Then it's about like your perceived connection to the ball or feel, right? When you made the change, you went to Extreme Pro, which I think makes a lot of sense because you have Radical Pro, you have Boom Pro, Speed Pro, so it should be called Pro. I think this makes a lot of sense. But you had an 100 square inch racket before that was like a heavier version with a denser pattern called the Extreme Pro. Will we see that back in some markets for people who like it, or is it just too small of a niche?
It's an Italian SMU, where we call it. So this racket in particular is still available in Italy due to the fact of Matteo being very popular there. Overall, we discussed it with our global markets. That's what we always do. We discuss it with our managers in the local subsidiaries that we have, and they opted out because they said like the new MP has been so well received. They don't want to confuse consumers, and I think that's always like the chicken and egg race, right? Like you as a tennis nerd, and like all the nerds that, let's say, listen to us, and also up to Max and myself, we would put out those rackets everywhere. But at the same time, we also get the comments like you're confusing the consumer. Like it's too many. It's like it's not a lot of people will actually feel or react to the difference. So that's kind of part of our job with the team. Obviously, it's not only just us two, but where we need to balance out what's right or wrong to do with the collection.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I know it can be very confusing to have too many options, and it's like if you look at the specs, you see this is also 100 square inches. It's just heavier. I can maybe add weight if I need it. And most people using the MP, you don't need to add weight, right? Like I would say 90% of players don't need to add any weight to that racket. So I completely understand it from a commercial point of view. It's just like good for the real nerds listening to know if that's coming or not, or if they have to travel to Italy now, go and buy it.
3 to 4 big like target groups. You got that group that wants that 97, 98 square inch head size racket with a slightly thinner beam that is, due to the head size and the frame construction, usually a little bit more control oriented with the bits and pieces that we can adapt. Then you got that customer that's running between that, let's say 270 gram to 300 gram on that 100 square inch, which we cover with the MP, the MPL version. And then you got that customer that wants a little bit oversized frame, even a little bit lighter, and they are not as picky as others on the weight. So for them, it doesn't really matter if it's 260 or 265. So we need to find the right playability of the layup, and that determines a little bit more the weight than we telling our R&D engineers which weight we actually want. Here we are truly focusing on the weight range with the best playability then.
Yeah, I must say, like, I really like the new lighter versions of your rackets in general. I would say, like, the Speed Team was a revelation. I thought that was one of the best light rackets I've ever tried. Like, the feeling is amazing on that racket, right? And I even wrote a post just about that racket because I was so excited about it. Because I think for a lot of, like, veteran players who play doubles stuff, has very good comfort. You really feel the ball, and good like launch angle and spin and power. So very easy to use. And I think similar with your other team models that I've tried, like it's like that segment of rackets is something that's getting a lot of love from your tech team, it seems like, your development team.
Yeah,
is that true?
Because we push them to get in love with those frames. Because it's also something that we have discussed here internally, and I think it's also a little bit here about brand perception, right? A lot of people talk about Head as being like the pro and MP brand and very kind of rackets that are demanding to play, and we wanted to show the outside world that, hey, like we are more than this, right? We are way more than this, and like our MPL, which the L stands for light, the lighter version of the MP, basically gets a lot of good feedback around the globe right now. Even here internally, we have people stopping at our office and say like, wow, I'm so surprised how those rackets perform now. And as you said, on the team collection in general, like also here on the restructuring of this extreme silo right now, having just one team model, also with the speed, having one team model, we really want to put some focus on it, and we will continue to do this across the silos over the next couple of years. And as you said, like Speed Team is an amazing racket, in my opinion, also for juniors, for juniors that maybe not have developed yet the body type, really fully go for it, but still want that speed kind of feel and sensation and the look. I think it's a very good and right now still a little bit underrated racket in the market. I think we need a little bit, one more generation maybe, to get it into the heads of people that they try this one.
But especially on the extreme, I think those models also have had a really nice upgrade. So you mentioned already the perceived stability, so that also holds true for the extreme MPL and the extreme T. And I think one thing that is particularly nice also for the target audience is the launch angle of the extreme. So it's a very spin-oriented frame. So it really helps those players as well to generate that kind of nice and aggressive trajectory, to also be on that level, really aggressive and use kind of the spirit of the extreme.
No, excellent frames. I really like the lighter offerings, because if you get, like, I usually tell people, like, you can get, if you're unsure of your weight range, right, or your specs, you're worried about quality control, whatever, but you can always get an MP Light, which is the same mold, and then you can tweak it if you want, and leave it as is if you want, because they play well. Like the Speed MP Light is something I really like as well. This MP Light seems good as well. So it's like, it's actually a good option. Let's say if you want, not sure quite if you're up for the 300 gram, and then you can get this, and if you can add a little bit of weight, and then you're home, you know. So I think that's actually a very good option, but people don't think about it.
That as well is that the MPL comes in a different string pattern also than the MP. So that's also a good option to know, I think, for consumers, because the MPL string pattern is a bit more open compared to the MP string pattern, which allows you to generate even more power and speed.
That also shows like our
that's a good point.
dedication for the love of detail of what players are looking for, and who we are targeting. So it would be an easy one for us to make just the MP a little bit lighter and go for it, and it still would be a success. But we weren't super happy with it, so we tried the other string pattern, and it just outperformed. So we take that choice and do two different string patterns. I don't think a lot of brands would do it actually. But it also shows our dedication here. Which strings did you try in this racket?
I tried Lynx Tor, Hawk Power, some other string brands as well. A few strings, yeah.
A major difference when playing with it? Because that's something that comes into my mind for, in particular, on the extreme.
Yeah, it's quite string. I feel like with the right string, it plays better. Like with the wrong string, it's a bit string sensitive. That's something I noted. Yeah, exactly. Some rackets are like that. It's just how it's like a personality in the racket.
Which is a very good point, because like when we were out traveling, for example, we were at Tennis Lab in Australia, and we had some discussions on strings, and also here, like I made, like as everyone can imagine, I was pretty sensitive on what they do with the string setups on rackets, and I think, in particular, for example, the Extreme Pro Former Tour is pretty sensitive, which is a good thing, because you can really kind of dive into it and how you want the racket to perform and how to feel. So I'm always telling everyone, if you try one with Lynx Touch and then try the other one with Lynx Tour, and you will definitely feel the difference. I mean, I remember when you were here and I gave you, I think one of mine was the Hawk Power back in the days. I think it was kind of a wow moment for you as well in terms of the difference, how the racket all of a sudden performed and sounded.
Yeah, Hawk Power was great in that one. Like I really enjoyed that combination. So that's a great string that I come back to from time to time. One thing I want to talk about as well is the cosmetic, because cosmetic is a big upgrade, I think. Like it looks super fresh, vibrant. The other one had a bit of up and down, I think, in the feedback general, like the avocado one. While this one just looks, I think everyone is pretty much in alignment. I mean, some people will never like anything colorful, like on a racket, so they would prefer a night edition. Maybe we see that at some point, I don't know. But I really like the cosmetic. Like, what was the thinking there?
Right here, that you said on this one.
No, but I think this it's a really good point, because there is so much love to the detail. So first of all, the nice thing was the Boom alternate was so successful that we took the inspiration a little bit from there. We wanted to follow up on that tonal approach and the tonal design option with the colors, which I think looks really cool on this one. In addition to that, you will notice that the grommets, they are transparent. So this is also something where we took the inspiration from the sneaker industry, because lots of modern sneakers with those vibrant colors like the Extreme, they actually have a transparent sound, which was really cool. So that's a really nice idea from our designers, which I think is really cool. And in general, like the color combination, we ran through a lot of iterations, because with tonal designs where you have two colors that are very similar, it's really crucial to find the sweet spot there. So you look in those Pantone color books, and for this one, even like our designers developed almost their own color, fine-tune it and find the sweet spot of combine.
Yeah, and it has to be kind of extreme, because that's the name, right? So it's like, I think it works really well in that sense, that it's extreme in a good way, it stands out. So I do know, like, people sometimes like to have the option of, like, here's a black edition, but that's for everything, right? So but this one, for me, it stands out in a really nice way. It pops and can be used with a vibrant string or like Hawk Power. It works with both, because some rackets don't work with string colors so easily, right?
It's as you say, like the black racket with some. Then technically, I think we wouldn't make a mistake if we do all the rackets black and just have one color pop in it in the different title colors. But all the year, like it's also kind of interesting to see people are asking, like, what we see in comments, what we get from retailers when we travel and stuff. They're like, oh, we tennis needs something new, tennis needs something fresh, tennis needs something like. And then we believe that we are also one of the brands that are in a good position to do it. We have the confidence to do it as well. We believe that our target audience is expecting this from us as well. Plus, we have the beautiful names that kind of are linked to doing something extreme or radical, So everyone can also stay tuned what's going to happen next year, because that's going to be story to be continued. So it's going to be interesting to see how people will react.
That's good. Sounds good. It sounds exciting. When it comes to a racket success, I mean, obviously it's important with the endorsed players, right? And we've had Berrettini, who is one of your, I guess, the biggest name using the Extreme. You have Fokina, you have Gasquet, obviously. You have a bunch of players like Struff. But Berrettini has now...
Don't forget about the last Wimbledon champion in women's.
Krejcikova, yes. So I was getting there, yeah. But for, like, example, Krejcikova now won Wimbledon. Berrettini, he has won 2 titles, like, really recently, right? So do you see that kind of when a player does well, do you see the trends in sales or in general interest? Or, I mean, you should be pretty happy with the timing. Like, you release this racket and then Berrettini just mops up parts of the ATP tour, and is back in business.
Couldn't work any better. You couldn't for us for more, right? Like, you have players that endorse these kind of styles. You get the visibility, and especially with this kind of design. I think if the racket, in this case, that's a good link. If the racket would have been black, probably, maybe like the majority of tennis players wouldn't have realized that there's something new. With this one, for example, it stands out on the court. I'm sure people watching it on the court, like what we heard from Kitzbühel, for example, people went from the stands into our booth to kind of ask what he's playing and if this is new and all this stuff. So, I mean, that's the whole logic at the end of sponsoring athletes, right? And working with athletes or brand ambassadors, however you want to name it. But definitely it has a positive impact, yes.
Do you now have a new updated CPI scale that I can use?
Max can talk about it a little bit. We have something new,
Yeah, so it will primarily be introduced in 2025. So we have it in our catalog, which we mostly use for retailers, to show all the products and update. We also want to really use it more and more in the future, also to just facilitate the process of buying a racket and really finding the right racket. And what we did for the new benefit structure is basically taking a step back and really asking consumers what they want from a racket. So when they go into a shop and buy a new one, what are the kind of parameters they're looking for the most? And obviously, as we all know, it's about power and control, which was also the reason why we introduced the CPI. But sometimes it's not only like this one dimension from a lot of power to a lot of control. Sometimes there is much more to it. And therefore, we also looked a lot at spin, which comes into play mostly for the extreme, obviously, and also the touch and the impact feel, kind of comfort that players are looking for. So we use those 4 parameters to come up with the heads to a racket compass, where we position all of our 5 main silos. So we basically have one scale, one axis, which is about power and control, and then we have another vertical second dimension of touch and spin. And then basically each franchise of our rackets has 2 of those attributes. So the speed really sits in the center of the head to racket compass, and it comes with precise power. And then we have each racket in a certain corridor. So for example, the gravity comes with control and touch, the radical comes with precision and spin, and the extreme comes with power and spin in the future. So this is the future way of positioning our silos and really facilitating retailers in selling a racket and telling the consumer what the racket is about, and also just it's a perfect quick orientation for consumers to find the right racket franchise.
Yeah, I think that is one of the key things. I mean, knowing from my point of view, is to highlight for the consumers, okay, I'm let's say a lot of players are brand loyal, so they I always played head, I'm gonna play head. I like the grip shape, I like the control I get from head rackets, feel whatever. But then you have many rackets, as we talked about before, and now all the brands seem to have many rackets with new silos coming and so on. But then it gets more confusing for the consumer. So the more insight you can get at a glance without maybe reading a bunch of reviews and stuff, I would say the better. And the brand that can do it the best will probably win a lot from that, because it's like an easy oversight of just, okay, some people will definitely go for, oh, Novak is my favorite player, I get a speed. Or Berrettini is my favorite player, but for players who are a little bit more into their own game and want to improve, I think it's good to have this kind of visualization. How do you plan to kind of roll it out? Will it be a part of your marketing in some way?
Initially, the plan actually was to introduce it in 2026 with the new collection, and obviously have it on the racket, shops and everywhere. But when we presented it to our sales team globally, the feedback was exceptional. So it was so good. But they were asking, we need to bring this quicker. It's such a nice orientation. It's so good. It makes so much sense. And therefore, we will already start talking about it in 2025. So as I said, it will be in the catalog. We will introduce it on head.com to really give the orientation and inform our consumers about our products. And we will use it a lot on social media. We will explain a lot where it comes from and where bottles position themselves as well. So there will be a lot of nice content about it to really make it simple for all to pick the right one.
And I need to re-emphasize what Max is saying. You rarely have situations where we are presenting in front of, let's say, 2025 general managers of all the countries and stuff, where they kind of also are aligned on that's what we need to do. That was a big relief for Max and myself as well, to finally have found something that everyone bought into, and we will expand it as Max explained all the detail.
And to add on to that, I think it was really a feedback for us that it's difficult to pick the right head racket and to really find the right racket in our range. And there are so many models, but we have a lot of models, yes, but every single model really makes sense. There is a really precise consumer for every single model in the head range, and every single racket makes a lot of sense. So this was for us really crucial to find a way how we can really communicate that and make sure that also every player really finds that one racket that is perfect for him.
And sometimes you unfortunately have something that kind of gets stuck in people's head about something, whatever, head has too many rackets. But if you really dive into it, we have more silos than the other brands. But not even that is true anymore. If you look what Wilson is doing right now, what Yonex is doing. So, and then if you go into depth, I think we are probably even right now the most streamlined and most kind of targeted kind of collection that you can get from us. And I think and Max and I can't actually wait for 2025. We actually would want to launch this now, what we have in pipeline for next year. Then it actually even makes more sense of what we keep doing. We hope that this is also going to be appreciated from the market, from our retail partners, from the consumer.
Yeah, I think the way I saw it before, I mean, it's changed a bit because now you're seeing all the brands release more and more rackets overall. So maybe it's a sign that you did something right from the beginning with your silos. Because if you see other brands also adding to their lines and to their silos, it makes sense to have a good selection, but it not being too deep, because that's when the thing starts getting confusing. Like, okay, how many 98s, how many hundreds, and what is the difference of a blade versus this thing, and et cetera, right? So so it's pretty logical in that sense, and I think people like choice. I don't know if you get that feedback, but people want to have like their own personality highlighted in a racket, and with the different color options that you have in your lines, I think that might resonate with people, because they, okay, I'm a boom person, or I'm a more of a radical like this, because it's quite strong in colors, which I don't see in the other brands. Would you agree with that?
How is the feedback that you get? I mean, you're spending quite some time at tournaments, you're on the court, you're testing like all the other brands, and like you talk to a lot of people. How is the feedback about, let's say, matte and glossy rackets, for example? That would be something I would love to ask you, kind of using this moment where we have a chat here.
Yeah, I think most people don't really think about it so much. And I think maybe it's changing a bit. Like old school players, they like the glossy, they like glossy, it should be glossy. But I think it's also changing a little bit depending on like the overall design of the racket. Because some rackets, I'm not sure like the new Extreme will look good glossy, you know what I mean? Like it doesn't suit the glossy design. I mean, I'm not sure if Berrettini plays glossy or not, but it's for example, doesn't really suit it. So, but it may be a black racket, like a more gloss to the speed looks better, for example, because it's black, right? So I think it's really dependent on the color, and people don't seem to think so much about gloss versus non-gloss. But what I said before is I get a lot of like, oh, I only want black rackets, I think that's a little bit like outdated, because like you said, it gets boring after a while. You're like, okay, I will try 4 different black rackets with different accents or color additions to it, and it's not that interesting, and you're not gonna get people maybe who are not super into tennis but want to get into tennis maybe to be so excited about tennis. And we have to think about growing the sport as well, and not only keeping the nerds there, but actually adding.
Yeah, you need to have something. So, and this is interesting also and you can think about it, we have to have in mind a global collection, right? And global kind of appeal of the product line, and also the various markets. So that Extreme racket right now in South Korea, and we had 2 major launch events. One was online, where nearly 500,000 people just in Korea watched the launch of this particular racket, which was incredible. I was a little bit overwhelmed because all of a sudden Max and I were asked to play during this video, which was kind of funny and a new experience too. And people just go crazy over there as well, and in general in Asia, on like, let's say, fancy, more extreme colors, like a little bit more outgoing and other than in other markets. But again, here the beauty sits in our entire collection, right? Because we can service pretty much from a taste perspective, from a color perspective. I think we put ourselves in a really good spot, that we have a good variety of a little bit more conservative, a little bit more extreme, a little bit in between. Obviously, we can't always have every silo and every taste and for everyone, because then it might get really a lot of rackets.
Yeah, I can understand that. And it's interesting to see different cultures. I think sometimes it's easy when you're a European guy sitting in Europe to be like, the European market is all you think about, which is kind of old school market in my experience. But there's like tennis is growing in Asia, it's growing in the Middle East, it's growing in new markets, right? And that the different tastes, different approaches to tennis. Well, where you're stuck in a kind of European, like the old PT57A prestige kind of, like a lot of people are like that, but it's changing. Like tennis is changing, and it seems to be doing well as a sport. So it's nice to embrace like new ways of looking at tennis.
From a technical side, I mean, Max can talk about this a little bit. Is the color obviously has some influence on what we can do technically with the layups of the rackets, with the weight distribution, and all this stuff. So sometimes it's also for us very important to start very early of like what do we want to achieve with the racket, and what influence does it have on playability, and what kind of options do we actually have with colors. But like, yeah, Max can say.
Yeah, it's another good point, because that actually leads me to one of the upgrades that we forgot talking about. But maybe before I talk about that, also one point in addition to having the 5 silos and tennis, you just say it becomes more multicultural, new markets grow and grow. But also in general, like when you observe tennis, I think that game style became much more multidimensional. So there's many different types of players, more than in the past, I would say. So there's obviously there's still conservative players with a lot of serve and volley, big serves and stuff like that. But lots of young players who really whip the ball with a lot of top spin, and still got the players with very flat strokes. So I think this is also a benefit, not only in terms of offering colors and designs, but also offering this variety in impact feel and playability and benefits of the racket. I think we're really well set up there. But to Dennis' point, I mean, one thing with the design also is that the black design is lighter than a light design, right? So when you have the raw frame coming out of the molds, the raw frame is black because of the carbon fibers. So if you make the racket then also black, you don't have to add a lot of weight, which is quite easy then to develop, because you save some weight there. You can do more to the layup and carbon fiber construction. And when you make a racket like the Extreme, for example, you have to add lots of layers so that the color really becomes that vibrant, which is then always a bit of a challenge for our R&D to get the layup right. And also it comes a lot to tolerances, because applying the spray paint is the most crucial part to keep the tolerances in a nice spectrum. So this is also an update we have for the Extreme being the first one. So on the Pro and the T model for the Extremes, we managed to really significantly reduce our tolerances. And so the rackets, this is always a critical topic, because obviously every consumer would love to have 2 identical rackets. But we produce so many rackets every year and it's still so manual, the process of developing a racket, which is why there's logically a bit of a difference in any racket. Because you add the grip pellets, you add the carbon fibers manually, you add the plastic parts manually. So all of those steps, they just add up to having tolerances in the end. But we now with the Extreme really managed to get it into a nice corridor. So we can promise in the future that it is plus minus 5 grams, which is not the end of our showing. So in the worst case, you can still have a 295 and a 305 gram Extreme Napkin, for example, which is not ideal. But also there, it's less likely, because usually a retailer receives one box where the rackets are all made by one worker in our factory, and then the rackets will be pretty close to each other anyway. So the biggest problem is usually when, I don't know, someone buys the Extreme Pro in Melbourne and then flies to Spain and buys another Extreme in Madrid, for example, then it might be that you really have the 295. But we are on to a journey to really get this right and make it as small as possible to really serve the kind of quality that people really expect from our brand.
And the entire world can be very happy that not Max and I are painting the rackets, because then we would talk about kilogram frames and not gram frames. It's last time we were in the factory, we always do this, and we always believe that every single time we would get better, but we are always struggling. So it's very impressive what people can do with their hands and hand-eye coordination on painting a tennis racket properly with all the details.
Yeah, I think people don't realize, unless they've seen videos maybe online or been lucky to been to your factory, right, is that how manual the process is, and like how like it's not easy to make a tennis racket. You start with like a tube of carbon, and then you're getting it into a racket. It's like an insane thing to see if you're holding a racket in your hand and then you're seeing the whole process from step one. It's something everybody should look up if they haven't already, because it's quite insane. And that's also why like the issues with quality control has been over the years, because it's a difficult process and it's labor intense, right? So, and you need like a skilled people doing it. It's for machines always.
Sometimes you hear it like on forums, you read like manufacturer ABC, whatever, they have a shitty QC or this paint job and stuff. It's like it's human made, like mistakes happen from time to time. We try to avoid as best as we can. Everyone does. Nobody likes to do mistakes, but it just happens. It's just, I think, how we are as humans, right? And sometimes I'm a little bit disappointed when people put it out very aggressive and kind of, I think some might even ask themselves if they have never done something wrong, then it's fine. They can shout out, but yeah. If you ever painted a racket, you know what we are talking about.
Yeah, it's a tricky one. When it comes to now looking ahead for future of the rest of the year, is there more releases coming up from Head? Anything you can tease? And what's the future of like Oxetic? Now you're in Oxetic 2. Do you see like working more with this technology deeper into the years, or what's in the works, without saying too much, I guess?
A little bit about the technology maybe, and about the teasing. Yes, there might be something coming up around maybe right after, during US Open. Some people might spot something. There are already some rumors out there on certain forums about one particular racket in a particular head size, which we are super excited about, because there's a lot more to it than just this, what's out there as a rumor. So we are actually, that's why I said like we want to fast forward actually to 2025, because this one is gonna be like, from everything we hear from our global teams where we did our sales presentation and stuff, like the excitement is already up there, which is super motivating to see. But I let Max talk a little bit about the technology and what we are looking into.
Yeah, I would even like to fast forward to 2026. There's even nicer things to come, but yeah, in terms of technology, Oxetic is super well perceived, so the feedback is pretty incredible. Also on Oxetic 2.0, maybe the nicer. You talked in the beginning about feeling this connection to the ball. I think this is really spot on with Oxetic, but at the same time, with a nice solid impact feel with this perceived stability. So it has done a lot to our range, making it just feel more solid and stable. Which is why we want to keep it. And therefore we are right now, researching a little bit on what kind of new technologies we might be able to combine with Oxetic to.
And every feedback, everyone should comment right now in your comment section, so we know what we need to do. Like in Germany, we always say we have 80 million national trainers for the soccer team. So in tennis, we all millions of emails out there. So please write whatever you want to write, so we know about it, and give some love to you and your podcast.
Yeah, I think people like to comment on stuff. That's generally what I see. I think I never wrote a YouTube comment, but people like to write YouTube comments, so it's good. So I usually encourage it, but sometimes you can get some interesting stuff in the comment line. But as long as it's like, it's with every kind of feedback. Like if you get constructive stuff as a manufacturer, as a person, as a content creator, whatever, it's fine. But if it's like just destructive and pointless, it's a bit, you can leave it to yourself, right? But it's constructive, it's interesting, and something to be gained from.
Absolutely. So yeah, it's an exciting 2025 coming up, and also already 2026. So we are in the middle of 2026 finalizing.
When it comes to your timeline, like your planning, like how difficult is that? Like I can see it from a company point of view, like to plan your releases for a new racket or a new shoe or whatever, to like, okay, when should this coincide? Maybe other brands will do something. When will we do the next release? Because you already have, like, you're already obviously planning years ahead. While for me, I don't even know like what that forum racket is talked about. Now I'm curious. I have to go and check that out. But
in one, you might already have on social media. There was a special racket we did with a company in the US for a certain women's promotion, which was super cool.
Yeah, but in general,
looks cool.
As you know, we have a 2-year life cycle. So usually we focus on 3 franchises 1 year, then 3 the year after. And we always try to obviously couple global events with a specific launch to really get the full player appearance, and use the timings where people are generally spend a lot of time on the tennis court and they're curious to look for new equipment. So that's always our major focus when we select the launch date, and then we just try to combine it in a nice way so that our logical order of releasing the products really makes sense.
Yeah, I can see that. And you need to keep the pulse on what the other brands are doing. Obviously, it's not like you have huge competition because it's only like three other brands that can even closely compete. I guess the racket market is tough, but obviously with strings and stuff, it gets complicated. Is there any new strings, Dennis? That's your love child. Is there anything that we should look forward to
some updates
this year
next week
or next
next year? Which is like I can already talk about it a little bit. We're gonna relaunch Hop Rough, because we are giving it the name that it should have had from the very beginning. Because Hop Rough was always the rough iteration of Hop Touch, so it's gonna be called Hop Touch Rough, and it's coming in a new colorway. So I think that's important for the consumer because I think it was a little bit misleading with Hop Rough. Then we will have our first racquet string, and I think everyone knew about it because there were big time testing with version 1 versus version 2. We have now the votes. We have made a decision, so that string is going to come. And yeah, maybe some other stuff as well that I shouldn't talk.
Yeah, I know. You have to keep your cards close to the vest. It comes with the territory, right? Yeah, so there's lots of things to look forward to, and I must really give you credit for just coming on the podcast and talking about gear, because it's the other brands. I mean, obviously Prince, Tim is great; he's doing it as well, and Prince Dennis since before. But I wish like other brands would also be open to coming and discussing their products, because I really appreciate the openness, and I think from reading the comments from previous podcasts you and I have done, Dennis, is that people really like to hear it from you guys and to have more of an open dialogue, and where you explain what's in the works and without saying too much, obviously. While I'm a bit disappointed that some other brands, they don't want to proactively do it, because I think it can really benefit them and the tennis nerds out there.
And I can only take it back to you, like a big thanks that you give us the platform to actually communicate, because for us it's very tough to sometimes communicate directly, let's say, with our consumers, right? Like, yes, we do market travels. Yes, we talk to retailers. We have selected groups, but here we don't even know who is going to listen, who is going to dive into this. Maybe the other brands are probably looking into it as well. And it's not about us, about Max or myself. It's truly about the brands, and why we want to, give everyone a sense and a feeling of like the passion we put into this, and that there is a thought process behind every single product. Because as I said, like a lot of comments, sometimes you can get a little bit frustrated also here because, they just put in new color there. This is not, that would be easy. We would be mainly on vacation if we could do this, because you just need a designer, not people like us anymore. And that's the reason why we are here, why we love what we do, and love talking to guys like you and others at any given time. So yeah, thanks.
Thank you. Thanks for your time today, guys. I know you're in a busy schedule, so I don't want to keep you hanging too long. Good luck with the launch. Good luck with the upcoming things. I'm keen to test new stuff coming. Strings, shoes, rackets, but exciting times to come.
Thanks, Jonas.